Curtis.
Hey, Kathy.
I was saying that Ellie's running late, so I'm gonna be moderating in the meantime.
Okay.
Do have some updates for the agenda and from him, so I could share those out.
Do you have a Word version of the minute templates by chance?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know that there was a minute template.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an official thing, but I can create one.
Okay. Hey, Jim.
Some boards actually have official templates. I don't believe we do. Not that I know.
Okay. All right.
No, because every committee, and that's been a topic over the years, has very different, everybody has different styles of writing minutes, and every committee chair has different styles. And so I remember once we spoke about kind of having like a standard, and I don't think there was any consensus on that.
I think when the borough president has, done their training sessions, one of the sessions was on taking minutes. And I recall, and it may not be from the borough president training, because the same thing was given with the Council of New York Cooperatives. There are different styles to taking minutes, and some are more summary than others. And so in many cases, when I point out that minutes are not a transcript, that's coming from the sessions that I've taken with the Council of New York Cooperatives, but also my buildings attorney years ago, sort of pointed out that, sort of legally, minutes can be ABC. And if you look at a lot of corporate minutes, they can be very summary, because it's, it's not going to in any detail of what was actually discussed. It's like there was a discussion of the merger of A and B, and there was no consensus at this meeting, and it was deferred until the next meeting. And, Joe is in charge of convening, and that's it, as opposed to summarizing what was discussed for 45 minutes.
Yeah, hold on, sorry. The assignment comes in later. Okay. Oh, we're still missing a good chunk of folks. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I shared Eliezer is running late, so he asked me to start. We're missing still a good chunk of folks, so I would say let's give it at least a couple more minutes. Maybe we could start at 6:36. And I do have some updates for him, so I could share that too.
And I believe you have quorum already, because there's more than 8 of you on the call.
We're gonna start.
Yeah.
Wayne challenge for an hour and 10-minute meeting. I said 90 minutes, but we'll see. All right, good evening. I hate seeing Happy New Year when it's like end of January, which is
Yeah, but it's our first meeting, so it's Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's our first meeting for the new year. So I know it's been a wild couple of weeks since we last met. So I hope everyone, has been safe and healthy, as have your loved ones. And as we continue this ride here in the city. I do have, actually, wait, let me call the meeting to order. It is 6:34. I do have some changes for the agenda. So obviously, so after we have to have the approval of the agenda as our second item, which isn't on here. Our fifth and sixth item is our secretary's report and our treasurer's report. Big welcome and welcome back to our executive committee members. And I think Nobles, I didn't see a confirmation, but Nobles might be dropping by with a report on or an update really, on the special election next week. So I have that as our seventh item for 5 minutes as well. So secretary, treasurer, and Nobles, if he drops in, is 5 minutes. If Nobles doesn't come at that time, then we'll have him at the end after committee reports. And let me see, did I make another change? And then the motion for adjournment. those are the only changes I have for the agenda. Are there any other edits? Okay, well, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, Mary and Wayne, thank you. All right, let me drop into my email for Elise. Okay, so I had a flurry of forwards from Eliezer. He did update us on something really important, which is the extension on the open meeting law. I don't see till when or what date. Maybe Ebenezer might have it when he shares it. But it has been extended, so we'll continue to be meeting virtually. What else did I see? There is a matter here, as you see when we go through our February calendar on an FDNY presentation. But when we work on the calendar, I'll share that. That's actually it from Eliezer. But on my part, I'm excited for a new year. It's always kind of like a restart personally, but also I think for our board. And, you know, getting to be able, I don't know or haven't heard yet in terms of like liaison and Levine's office, but I'm sure next week we'll be meeting folks and starting this new chapter. So it'll be fun. And that's it on my end. So I will pass it over to Ebenezer for our DM's report.
Thank you, Catherine. Good evening, everyone. I hope that everybody had a good holidays with the families. I know that the Omicron was really a challenge and many people got it here and there. My family, we all got a little bit. Christmas Eve, I was a little sick, and my wife, my children, they got it. I hope that if you got anything, you know, was mild. My family, we got a very mild symptoms. Or the flu or Omicron. Really, we don't know what it was, but we got a little sick at the end of the year. I want to report a sad, report that I got this morning from the 33rd precinct is that we started the year with a homicide on 176th Street on Sunday, January 16 this year. A black male, 44, was shot in the stomach and was found laid face up in the lobby of this building. There is no arrest, no apprehension. They doing the investigation, but this is information that I get this morning. Also, like Catherine was saying, the open meeting law changes that allow that we have these meetings was approved, but it was only like an hour ago that I got a confirmation that the governor signed it. Last week, we had the news, we have exchanged emails with the district managers that it was approved by the assembly, then was approved by the Senate on Friday, but was only this afternoon, like an hour ago, that the governor signed it. So it's a law, and one particular characteristic that this extension had is that was approved and extended until the emergency is lifted. That means that doesn't have to be extended to a particular day. Once the agency, the governor and all the elected officials said that the emergency is lifted, then the amendment to this law going to be lifted as well. So we have, we can say that it has been approved, the variation to the meeting law to allow this type of meetings have been approved indefinitely. And finally, the fire department accept our invitation to give presentations at the general meeting in January and to several meetings in February, several committee meetings in February. They are more likely to come and help us. and give us training and safety, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, this request was triggered by the big fire that happened a few weeks ago in the Bronx, where 17 people died. We have one little conflict with this request, and the fire department requests us that one of the committees or two of the committees that we request presentation. One was the Health and Environmental Committee, and the other one was the Housing Committee. They meet on the same night, almost at the same time, and they requested if we can merge these two meetings to have only one presentation on that day at night, because that day in the morning, it will be a presentation for the Aging Committee. So that they will have three presentations. So they asked us, asked us to merge these two meetings. I sent an email to Steve Simon and Daryl Cochran this afternoon, asking if it's okay with them to merge these two meetings for the presentation. Daryl responded that is fine with him. I hope that Steve have the same sentiment and the same feeling that we can have only one meeting for this presentation. Thank you very much. This is the end of my report. Is there any question?
Yes.
I have a question. I can't read. I don't know what the end feature is these days. But
Yes, Curtis.
my question, maybe suggestion, having conducted a fire education workshop when I chair a public safety committee, is to encourage them to bring material in Spanish, or to have their PowerPoints or their presentation captioned in Spanish, because we had several attendees who requested information in Spanish and they didn't bring that with them. So I would encourage the FDNY to make sure they bring resources, either a translator or have their PowerPoint presentation in English and Spanish.
Thank you. I'm going to bring this suggestion to them. Very good. Wayne?
Yeah, I'm trying to get an update on the status of the resolution to LPC concerning the markers, the two historic markers in the Jamel Terrace district. And I've emailed a couple times to ask if that reso was finalized and went in time for the January 11th public hearing, but I never got a response.
Which one was that? Because we work in a few things with you.
Well,
that was.
You were only working on one resolution with me, and that's the one where on the day of the land use committee meeting, LPC reached out to you to see if the board had any comments on the two historic markers that were to be located in the Jamel Terrace district. So since the public hearing was on the 11th, which was the same day as the Parks and Cultural Affairs, which had previously dealt with this, land use took care of that and sent the resolution to you and staff with a copy to Eleazar for him to approve as chair and to provide to LPC prior to the January 11th public hearing. And I emailed a couple times to ask if that resolution was submitted, but I never got a response.
Yes. What happened with this one is that the applicant wants to use a resolution that the Parks Committee passed a few years ago.
But that doesn't answer my question. I understand, but because
if you allow me to explain you.
Yeah, what I think what I explained to Liz as well, the resolution that the board passed unanimously supporting the initiative is fine, except these two markers are located in the historic district. So LPC is not looking to know if we support the initiative in general. We're looking to see if we have any comment on the two that are to be located in a historic district.
Exactly. And when I had my conversation with them, I explained to them that this was two different locations, and DOT called me and said that they're going to ask the applicant to come to see us because they will not go with that resolution that was passed a few years ago. So the applicants, they have to come in person to your committee and they have a discussion because they're gonna discuss this matter because of that particular reason that you just mentioned. Okay. And I mentioned to them as well. So nothing happened with that. I didn't send it. We didn't send the DOT said that the
No,
applicant have to come
not
to
to
us.
DOT, to LPC.
No. DOT called me. They're not supposed to be. DOT is the one, the agency dealing with this matter. We got the request from the commission, but the commission give DOT my number, my cell number, and they call me asking for information on this matter. Because of that, they said, well, we're going to ask the applicant. We're not going to move doing anything, and we're going to ask the applicant to come to the community board with this matter. So we're waiting for that. I apologize that I didn't give you an update on that one. Very busy lately, but this is the matter. Nothing happened with that, Wayne.
I would say two things. If this is a matter where DOT is involved, I would suggest that the applicant go to T&T, not to land use. I'm more than happy to forward the resolution that land use passed to Debbie. But I would also say that the emails that I've seen from LPC continue to have for January, and I think they may have moved it to February, an item in LPC's calendar for these two. So it's not clear to me that DOT's requirement alone is what must be addressed. So please check with LPC, because it doesn't make sense for us to have dealt with this at the last minute, only to have it ignored. And then if there was additional information as to why it would be delayed, that I didn't get a response until now.
Okay, I will follow with them tomorrow morning to see what is the status of this one. But my understanding is that they will not do anything because the applicant, the resident, that is a former board member, has to come before us with this particular matter.
Okay.
As I said, make sure we are checking not just with DOT, but also with landmarks. DOT cannot speak for landmarks.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest also, Ebenezer, if you can, once you kind of sort that out, if you can just loop in Debbie and Wayne in case they need to follow up or that becomes an agenda item. Sally has her hand and Daryl follows.
Yeah, just a question about merging those meetings for the fire safety presentation. What happens to the rest of health and environment and housing and human services agenda? Do we merge and then split?
So
that has been done in the past.
Can you repeat the question, Sally? Because
that was basically my question too, Sally. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we merge the meetings so that there only has to be one fire safety presentation, what happens to the rest of our agenda? Because I think both health and environment and housing and human services have other matters they want to discuss. So
if I could just offer, a response based upon what has happened in the past, on a couple of occasions, when we had like live meetings, we've done it where the presentation was, either the first item or whatever, the chairs arranged for it to happen. And after what the shared meeting was over, the committees then split and continued with the rest of their agenda. So it would be, Daryl and Steve could work that out. And it's easier since it's virtual.
How that works on Zoom.
Yeah, Debbie, I think maybe Ebenezer.
You would have two links.
Hold on one second.
Wait. There's an order. So Debbie.
Like chair.
Hold on one second.
One of the chairs in question. Yeah, I think maybe we can work this offline, but yeah, there might have to be 3 different meetings on Zoom or something. 1 joint and then 2 separate afterwards, something of that nature.
Well, I just need the agreement of both chairs, and after that, the office and myself, we're gonna do the logistic, how we're gonna have those meetings together for the first part, and then separated for the other part. I need the consent from both of you, and then I figured out how we're gonna be doing with the Zoom. Who is next, Debbie?
No, hold on. I have my hand for this item specifically. Liz, is your hand up for this item as well? Yeah, so Steve is gonna be coming on board later. He usually chimes in later. So when he comes in, we can make sure to raise that again. I was gonna suggest I'm like either 3 links, which feels overwhelming, and it also seems based on the timing that folks are, like Steve and Daryl would have to check their February calendars, and if it's possible, because normally it's been either like 1 hearing, so it would just be 1 meeting and that would be it. Or I want to suggest a third, in that I don't know if there's resistance from FDNY on it in terms of just having really precise scheduled times for both meeting links. So like whether it's 6:30 for, 6:30, let's say, for housing, and then 7 on the dot, they just jump in to health and environment, because usually in health, we have lots of presentations. I don't see why we can't be on the later end of that meeting, and it's easier for them just to kind of hop in, hop out. I like the idea of having had been just 1 joint meeting. I think there's a lot of benefits there, but that could be kind of like more outreach, more time and planning done, that I feel like in 2 weeks doesn't make sense for us. So I just wanted a third alternative. Go ahead, Liz, and then I know Debbie has her hand up for something else.
I just wanted to say that with Zoom, it might be a little bit easier to have 1 link, and then you can use the breakout rooms feature, and you can you can take all of the people who are members of the one committee and send them to one room, and all of the people who are members of the other committee and send them to the other room, and ask guests, people who are not on a committee, but who are in attendance and who want to go to one or the other committee meeting, which one they want to go to, and then send them to that breakout room. And it would only require 1 staff person to monitor because it's technically 1 Zoom, but 2 breakout rooms, and people could actually, anybody who's a co-host can go from room to room if they wanted to, and that would include obviously the staff person who is managing that. And I'm quite sure that somebody more knowledgeable about Zoom than I could walk the staff through this, or perhaps there's somebody at the borough president's office who's particularly well versed in the breakout room feature. That's my suggestion.
And I wonder if both can be recorded at the same time.
Yes, you can record. There's the ability to record them both, is my understanding of how breakout rooms work. I've been in them. I've never been the host of a meeting that has that feature.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Liz.
Okay. Thank you for the suggestion.
You bet.
Yeah, so Debbie.
Thanks, Kathy. Coming back to the street naming, and I know Ebenezer, you know this backwards and forwards, but just as a reminder, that things that come before through the co-naming process and TNT happens only twice a year, in our April meeting and the October meeting, and that matches up with when the city council votes on co-namings, which was June and December. I've never been around something like this. I mean, I know we don't know all the details of how it all comes together, but if it's something like LBC needs to have their part, and until they bless their part, then it can't do the normal part. But just know that if this comes back to our committee, it sounds like, remember that we would then see it in April, or need to, so the applicant would need to have stuff to us by April. And again, Ebenezer is super been around many more of these than I have, and he knows it super well, but either one of us can give, the information on that part if that's what it comes to.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other question? Thank you very much. Bless you all.
Thanks, Ebenezer. All right. Next up, Curtis. I mean, I know impromptu, but if you have some words you want to share.
None at all.
Yeah. Granted. All right. Sally, welcome on board as
Madam
treasurer.
Chair, did you jump the calendar discussion or not?
Oh,
you're
no,
gonna
no,
fill
I put it after. So it's treasurer. No,
Okay,
I don't see
my
nobles here.
Okay.
And then the calendar discussion, sorry. So Sally, take it away. Super excited for your
So can you
tenure
guys
as
hear me?
treasurer. Go ahead.
Can you hear
Yes.
me? Okay, great.
Yes.
You should have gotten late this afternoon, the treasurer's report for January. It looks fairly familiar to what you've been getting from Omar since I used his framework. The one thing I would point to is that we have 18,500 in discretionary funding, which needs to be discussed by the board. Specifically, I will point to $10,000. It's an environmental initiative. It's one of the city council's largest initiatives. Each council member gets $280,000 to designate for funding cleaning services, including but not limited to litter collection and graffiti removal. The Health and Environment Committee discussed this in September, and our idea was to host 2 e-waste recycling events. There's usually one a year, but this would be 2 e-waste recycling events, one in Washington Heights, one in Inwood, which we would do in collaboration with the Lower East Side Ecology Center. And this is just an item that's out there for the board and or the executive committee. I'm not sure which one rules to designate this funding. So, and then the other initiatives were $1,000 from Ben Kalos to fund either an urban planner or technical services, 5,000 from Udonis for programming, which I guess has been allocated to translation services. That was before my time. And then 2,500 from Mark Levine, and that all comes out of the discretionary funding under local initiatives. So I'm not sure where that money sits now, but none of it right now, it's sitting in our budget, 18,500, which I think should be discussed by the executive committee or the full board. So I'm not sure how to move forward on that. And I guess any discussion of how to use the environmental money should wait until Steve is on the call.
Thanks, Sally. I have my hand and Liz's as well, and Curtis. I had a question from when Omar on the environmental money, he was saying that it was kind of like still stuck in the channels in terms of making its way through our board. Do you know if that's still the case, or is that an area for follow-up? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Finish your question and then I'll.
Yeah, no, so I just wanted to say in general, it's January new, but then at the same time, we have 6 months to spend. So I just wanted to highlight, in terms of what may have not made it, and on off this Zoom with the office, just so we can kind of check in if it's made it to the board. And that way, next month we can start kind of writing out proposals and ideas within health and environment, so that we can make sure that funding is spent, not sitting there.
Okay, it looks like based on the crystal report that Ebenezer sent me, it went from 8,500 to 18,500. So it looks like it has been allocated. I can double check with Ebenezer. When you go on the city council site, it doesn't come up, but it looks like the switch has been made, but I can double check. I assume that's what the $10,000 difference is.
Yeah, same. Awesome. That's great. Liz, go ahead.
Thanks. I was going to say I didn't receive the report, but now I see I did receive the report. I just took a look at it. Thank you very much, Sally. My question is, to the extent that we have left over any kind of balance of PS funding, I would love to see a, not even a very part-time hourly person hired to work primarily with through the licensing committee, but we really need somebody who's posting flyers and helping to do, email is great and social media is great, but there are plenty of people in the community who aren't using that and who need like physical reminders of when that we have meetings and when and where they are and what they're about. And that's particularly a concern for licensing committee meetings, to make sure that flyers are posted in the area of the businesses that are on the agenda. But when there's a particular item for, Fort Washington Park that some committee chairs have the time and ability to do this kind of posting, if there's an agenda item that's geographically specific. I really think that this is something that the board staff should be doing. And I understand that the current staffing level may not afford that. And it would be great if we were able to pay somebody, a couple hours a week to post flyers for our meetings to help get the word out. And if we have any budgetary availability to do that, that would be my vote for where to spend a few bucks if we have them.
It looks like we do, because Mark Levine's was for outreach and programming. So
I would definitely call this outreach. And, the thing about outreach is that it is the gift that keeps on giving. Once people realize that the community board is a thing, they get on the mailing list, they start coming to meetings, they start getting involved in other issues than whatever it was that brought them in. They start telling their neighbors. Sometimes they start attending meetings, applying to be community board members. So I really think that this would pay really serious dividends, metaphorically speaking.
Mary has her hand up. I wanted to say something on Liz's point, but I'll wait. And Curtis also has his hand. So go ahead, Mary.
I was just wondering, actually, nothing to do with the money, but the report itself, if the font can be bigger. I mean, I can't see it. I printed it out. I still can't see it. It's so tiny. I mean, I think it could be extended down so that we can read it.
Sorry to butt in, but Mary, I feel you. And what I did rather than printing it out is when you click on the report, there's a little space at the bottom that has a plus sign and a negative sign. And if you just keep hitting that plus sign, you're going to increase it to a really nice viewable size. And then you can use the cursor at the bottom to go right to left, and on the right to go up and down. And it becomes a very readable thing. I had exactly the same problem.
I won't remember all that, but thank you.
There's another way, so I can see if I can if it works, I'll forward it to you, Mary. I wanted to just share on the point earlier, and I got Curtis, so that the PS funding, if I understood correctly, doesn't actually funnel through us, but through the city. So it's funding that we can't touch. But what we can do, and I completely agree, and it's something that I had asked Adele last year, is that we can have stipends. So that outreach money, we can propose a stipend program, and I do think we as a board have the capacity to host that, in terms of having applicants, different hours, whether it's we want to teach folks or folks who are already experienced in outreach, and target it right for licensing or any other kind of like resounding areas that folks are repeatedly coming and that don't know about, right? So whether that's like housing stuff or anything else. But I did want to share that stipends are possible. So go ahead, Curtis, and then Debbie, and then we'll move on.
Under the translation services, I'm not sure what has been done so far, but I have been doing some research into the Zoom functionality and their interpretation options. I think it would be a good use of our funding to use the built-in translation services for Zoom. I based on what I've researched, there are some hiccups to it, but it seemed like a good use. Maybe even more useful if we were able to know who needed those services in advance of the meeting so we can acquire them and not just pay for someone to be present if we didn't need the services. But those are some details to work out, but I do feel like that would be a good use of the funding. In addition to just having someone attend meetings, we can decide on having someone be on call for translation services during the general body, or maybe some of the committees that we know there is a greater need than others. So that's just a suggestion as well.
Great. And just a quick note on that, Curtis, that money was actually allocated to programming expenses. And I think sometime before I was here, there was a decision must have been made about it being used for translation, but I agree with your point.
Debbie?
And I just wanted to throw in, I mean, all these ideas are fantastic. I particularly want to recognize Liz's and also Kathy's comments, because, you know, this is a challenge. Like the channels by which information about community board meetings are communicated, like the email blasts, like I don't even like getting them. No offense to any of my colleagues, but you know what I mean? Like most people don't that's not one of the ways that they take in information. And Kathy's done a lot of thinking, I think. I mean, there's a lot of people here who have a lot of experience with outreach and thinking about outreach, but Kathy certainly has. And I just think it's a brilliant idea to sort of get over the thing of like, but how do people take in the information? That's good marketing, right? It's not just what you're saying, it's sort of how you're delivering it, and that you're delivering it in a way that people consume. So maybe they consume something on Facebook, or but not on our page. Again, there's a 1% chance people are going to like start following CB12 on Facebook. So sort of where are people, meet them where they are. And again, I think we can, I mean, again, there's a lot of people who really think well about this, but I think this just sort of comes hand in hand with some things that I know a lot of people have been highlighting about this barrier we have to really get to people, to let them know that these things are happening. And occasionally, to Liz's point, it's like there's something you come in on and then you realize, oh, but I'm also interested in that other thing. I'll do this again. So thanks, and all the ideas are great, and Curtis, yours too, and thanks, Sally, and all that.
Awesome, thanks, Debbie. All right, so we'll be hearing more on all those items. Next up, you can pull up your February and March calendars. I know Steve is not here yet, so we'll have to wait for him, but if we'll start with the month of February. I'm not even looking at February. All right, so if you notice, you have a stacked first week. For the month of February, are there any changes, any time changes perhaps in terms of meetings? Thumbs up, thumbs up. I'm assuming black screens are still thumbs up. All right, going once, going twice for the month of February. And that is a close, except for Steve. Actually, on our general, wait, there's a mistake on February. Look at that. General board meetings at 6:30, right? Not 7. So we have 7 p.m. listed for February. All right, on to March, same thing. The 21st and 22nd, so exec meeting and board meeting fall the same week.
Why?
Those should be at 6:30.
Yeah.
That's what
But
I'm
why are
looking
they the
at now
same?
to
Why are they
understand.
one day after the other?
Because Monday the 7th is the 1st, then the 14th, and then 24th. Oh yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah, so typically.
So board meeting should be the 29th of March.
No. The
Oh no,
board,
it's the 4th. Yeah.
The
The board
executive
meet-
meeting should.
the general meeting is always on the 4th Tuesday, but in months when the first Tuesday is the 1st, such that the 3rd Monday is the day before the 4th Tuesday, we've generally moved the executive committee to the 3rd Tuesday or the 3rd Monday, or because otherwise it's just not tenable for the staff. And this happens a couple of times a year, that the 1st of the month is a Tuesday and we run into this problem. So that's generally
Mhm.
how we've solved it. And so I would recommend that since Faye has her committee meeting on the second Monday, that we move the executive committee to the third Tuesday, the 15th.
Right.
I would also suggest that, respectfully request that in honor of Purim, which is the evening of Wednesday, the 16th through the evening of Thursday, the 17th, work is not prohibited, so there's no reason why not to have the meeting then. But I would respectfully request that in keeping with the holiday, everyone wear a costume. I'm kidding.
Nice.
Thanks, Liz. So where are folks at in terms
Also,
of
it's
meeting the
customary
exec
to get drunk.
meeting? Yeah, that I have seen. Not Liz, sorry. Folks, so Liz has just suggested moving exec from the 21st to the 15th on a Tuesday. Are there any objections to that?
Well, why not leave the exec where it is to give the committee time if they need to do something relative to youth and education, which would only be the day before if we moved it, and move the general meeting to the 29th.
Because then we run into an attendance requirement, and anybody who decides that they feel like calling in ugly, they are automatically excused. I don't mean to be, to throw any shade on the non-executive committee members, but I think as a group, executive committee members tend to show up in a pretty consistent and reliable way. And we are all much more likely to actually show up to an executive committee. And if we move the March general meeting to the 5th Tuesday, it's just going to give people an excuse to not show up. In the past, when we've done that, we wind up having a quorum problem. And there isn't typically a whole lot that committees have to do in preparation for the exec.
No, that's not my point. That wasn't my point. My point was if, in some instances, the exec committee has to deal with something on behalf of a committee. And so if youth and education needed to refer something to the exec committee, it literally would be the day before that it's meeting.
I'm still not understanding why what's the problem there.
Hold on, Liz. Let me hear from Debbie and Sally to see where folks are at in terms of moving which meeting. Go ahead, Debbie.
I really think the public facing meeting, the public that attends general meetings knows the fourth Tuesday. Like, I don't think we should, I understand open meetings law, but the executive is not a public meeting. I think we should take our chances with that scenario, which, rarely, it's not like land use. Faye doesn't end up with stuff with that the gun goes off. So I think we're much safer doing that, and I wouldn't affect, the public's attendance. Like, that's what we're here for. Just my view.
Sally, okay, Sally and Jim.
Debbie just said what I was going to say. Don't move the general meeting.
Okay, Jim.
Technically, the executive committee is a public meeting. It's not a public meeting, but it is in fact a public meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so it seems, just from what I'm hearing, it seems that more folks are want to stick to keeping general on the 22nd and moving the exec the 21st to the 15th. I feel like we might not need a vote on this. Totally can, but are we cool with moving the 21st to the 15th? Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, I see more thumbs up than thumbs down. Faye, is that your hand up for that point? Faye?
Yeah, I'm good. Yes.
Yes, so moving the exec meeting?
Yes, no, and I'm gonna concur with the rest of the colleagues, yes.
Okay, all right, great.
Thank
So
you.
we'll be moving that to the 15th. That squares away March. And then Ebenezer, we can make a note just to follow up with Steve Simon on the joint meeting. All right, we're moving on to our committee chair reports. So traffic and transport. Yes.
One thing, just wanted to just remind us, as we had a difficult time last year with sending out messages for Black History Month, but also next month is Dominican Heritage Month, and March is Women's History Month. So it'd be good if we thought in advance about the communication. I'm happy to take the lead on writing something for Black History Month and sending that to the office. I don't know what, and then we have Dominican Heritage Month and Women's Heritage Month in March. I think Dominican Heritage Month starts at the end of January and overlaps with Black History Month. So it'd be good to have just a statement for those things, particularly in February when they have two celebrations, and also March, which is around the corner for Women's History Month. So.
I was gonna say, I think we have so many new members. Just to share, I think this is a cool opportunity to kind of open it up for folks to collaborate on communications.
Perfect.
So if we could send like an email, like, hey, would you want to collab on writing? And we did talk about last year about doing like, okay, what are all the months so that we're ahead of the curve?
Exactly.
I don't mind writing up all the months, and then maybe we can kind of see where folks want to collaborate for.
Yeah. So I won't volunteer to take the lead on it, but if we email out everyone, if people want support, I'm happy to support. But I think it's a great opportunity to give the new people an opportunity to make a statement themselves and share with us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I got Curtis for Feb, and then we'll send it out and see if folks want to write, collaborate, and also for March. Thank you for bringing it up. Oh yeah, okay. So that leads us back to Debbie for our traffic and.
Thanks, Kathy. I am going to ask for people's forbearance because this is going to take a few extra minutes, given some concerns I had at the December general meeting. In January, we did something a little unusual at TNT. We had a working session to go through what is almost 100 pages of New York City streets plan. This plan comes out, for those that might remember, 2019 City Council legislation that made it a requirement the DOT do this plan. I think they have to update it like every 5 years, something like that. So the plan is a blueprint for the future of streets. And the vision is around bringing about improved and more accessible mass transit, as well as safer streets that reprioritize pedestrians and cyclists versus cars while reducing congestion and emissions. In other words, make transit, biking, car share for hire vehicles, all of that, micromobility, everything more attractive relative to people driving their own personal vehicles. The plan builds on prior strategic work, including One New York City, which was from 2015, which was focused on reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. It built on Vision Zero Action Plan, which I think everybody pretty well understands. Green Wave 2019, which is around cyclist safety. Better Buses Action Plan, a recent freight plan, and more. So it tried to sort of bring all this together. More than anything, the plan contends with the fact that New York City street space is finite. The plan aims to strike the balance in a city with very different neighborhood contexts and making trade-offs. People obviously don't like to make trade-offs. So the plan's goals start with safety, which again, people I think are pretty familiar with the orientation of DOT around safety concerns. Followed by equity. Now, so they actually have built goals that would prioritize investments based on criteria that includes things like population and job density, percent of non-white population, and previous investment levels. So what does that add up to? CB12 is actually considered a tier 1 priority investment area. There's other goals, accessibility, curb management, trying to create more rationality for all the different things that want to happen on the curb, freight, public participation, et cetera, et cetera. Discussion was important because it was a basis for, it's like, it underlies everything that we do see and we will see from DOT over time, particularly as a tier 1 investment area. But it was also important because of what happened at the December general meeting. So, in September 2020, people may remember the board passed a resolution pretty close to unanimously, if I'm remembering properly, demanding that DOT respond to the dangerous conditions on Amsterdam North of 181st. This resolution came out of a letter that had been signed by a number of schools, like I don't even remember how many, elected officials, other area institutions, and what was like pretty much the broadest demand for action like of DOT that I've seen in my time And it was very important, obviously, then as a committee and as a community board that we respond to it as well. So that was a resolution. It really was an urgent resolution in September 2020. And it was more than a year later before we received the first phase response to that resolution. Committee was impressed with the presentation. We were excited about this student group who worked along, this came out of DOT school safety. And the resolution support passed out of committee unanimously. And we were pretty psyched about it. So after CB12 passed a resolution demanding DOT to do something and address the safety issues, after they come back with a plan in part that responded to that resolution, the resolution with respect to that response almost didn't pass. And on top of that, there were some sort of insulting remarks about the high school students. And I actually think there's like a really neat opportunity to understand like how DOT did this and like, why can't that be with more agencies to have people like really get to work alongside students, get to work alongside the agency. So I guess, you know, it was a little distressing for the committee, I have to say. And I think it's one thing to come out in a different place than the committee comes out. Like we all own our own vote and we've all been there. We just don't come out where the committee comes out. That's cool. This felt like more than that. DOT's charged with making our streets more safe. So they have to do something when people are getting killed and seriously injured. They use data, 311 data, accident data, lots of other stuff to sort of figure out what the hot spots are, or sometimes they're responding to a community board resolution to find out what the problem area is. So our job as a community board, as I see it, and certainly on the committee, is to provide the neighborhood specific context. What is different about our needs in terms of streets, like the fact that our car owners tend to really use their cars. We are far from the urban core. We have our own, we have interesting topography. We are proximate to the world's busiest bridge. So our job is to make sure all that gets translated to DOT of like what we need in particular. So this all fits together, you know, this sort of session we did, which we needed to do because this is a big piece of strategic work. And so it was important for the committee to kind of like really get in there and understand it. But also because of how things went down in December. I think when people vote against not so much like the specific resolution on a given month, but maybe against agency policy overall, like we really risk losing our credibility. Like we have to vote on that resolution. And to be clear, there are other things that got raised that are important issues, and that might be stuff to come to me and say, like, we should have that on the agenda. Why don't we talk about that? And those are all good ideas, but I really hope we can get a little bit back to basics. It really felt like it didn't feel good. I guess that's what I want to say. So, but we really enjoyed like this session. It wasn't the usual thing with a guest and all of that. But it was a good way to sort of split up 100 pages and really understand what was in there.
Okay, thanks, Abby. We have Domingo and Liz.
Yeah, so I'm interested in knowing what procedures DOT is following when it comes to community engagement. Like I understand we're a tier 1 in priority list, et cetera, but I'm interested in knowing how they're going to incorporate community engagement, particularly potentially reaching out to a direct area. Students is great to include them into the picture, but I think also including people who live in the direct vicinity is interesting to, like, I'm interested in knowing what type of strategies they're going to use to be able to do that.
No, I think the issues, and then again, that also Kathy raised at the meeting of sort of how is the agency approaching outreach? And this is any of our agencies that we deal with, but it's certainly true of DOT, is that, and again, one of the 10 goals of this streets plan, you know, again, required by the city council, is all around public outreach, because they understand as much as they do, you're still not, you know, they know more needs to be done, and that we hit up against these challenges of really making sure that like people really know about it in the areas being impacted. I am happy to go through. I mean, this one actually had a lot wider outreach, but I can send you some the information about sort of what it was in this specific context, what it talks about in the plan. And again, I think we had some good suggestions made earlier in the meeting about like, yeah, let's just flyer because, and other things as well. I will say, you know, and this I'll sort of say, I'll own it. I have been really kind of stretched. And so the past, I would say a lot of like my past series of meetings since the fall, I'm late getting the agenda item out. I try to put it on Facebook also and stuff like that. And we've actually had really, you know, and I'm sure everybody's seen this. It's certainly true from at TNT. A lot better participation. We've had much bigger meetings, which has been really exciting. And again, just one more thing, just to tickle and say, like, it was really neat for students to get to literally work alongside the traffic engineers and do the process with DOT. And I don't know if that's possible in any other agency, but it's a really neat way. And as Omar said at the time, you know, it's like for people that then went into work for a government agency, it's like, wow, I didn't even know any of this existed when I was that young. It took me all these decades to get to this place, you know, professionally, that was my choice. It's like, it's a really neat opportunity. And from a youth development standpoint, to my mind, anyway.
Yeah, Debbie.
But we can
hold on, Domingo.
I'll send some stuff over.
My question wasn't necessarily answered. I'm willing to work with you, Debbie, on potentially putting together a resolution where we provide recommendations to DOT on engagement processes. And I know everybody's time is stretched thin. We could incorporate youth engagement, but I do think it's important to provide suggestions to a criteria on how to engage our community, especially being that we are categorized as a tier 1 priority. And I think that also involves engaging our community to truly understand what they want and vision, and DOT be the vehicle for that. Thank you.
Okay, you have 3 more hands, Debbie, so I'm gonna take a go on you and then we can connect on that offline. Liz, Sally, and then Faye.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that even though we do have a time limit of however many minutes per committee, I think that the larger issue that Debbie is raising is really appropriate for the executive committee to consider, which is the extent to which we as an executive committee work with each other to get the word out to other committees about like, hey, I'm working on a resolution or an issue in my committee that I think overlaps with your committee. And also how we as a board make it our business to show up not only to the committees to which we are, the committee or committees to which we are assigned, but also periodically show up to other committees that are dealing with issues that may be important to us, either because of where we live or what our particular passions or interests are. I also want to say that it is a very, very poor standard of community engagement to say, did someone ask me? You know, my standard of, I can't say, well, there was great community engagement because I knew about this, or there was terrible community engagement because I didn't know about this. Our standard of community engagement has to be broader than just ourselves. And we also have to allow our colleagues to do the work of the committees. And if I can't, every committee chair knows that I routinely show up to other people's meetings because there's stuff that I care about. And if something is happening in a committee and I really care about it and I can't make it to that meeting, then that is my bad. And I can't hijack the executive committee or the general meeting to get a redo explanation on what I might have missed because I didn't get to the committee. Damn it, we should be reading the minutes. We should be going to the committees that are doing the work of projects that we care about. And if we can't do that, then we have to trust the leadership of that committee and the membership of that committee that they did their due diligence.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Sally?
Yeah, the only exception to that, Liz, would be on Thursdays when Health and Environment meets. We're not able to go to Housing and Human Services, so we're automatically locked out of that discussion. But that's not my question. I had a question for Debbie on a totally different subject, just street co-namings, or two questions. One is, do those co-namings come before the community board? And second, it seems like in the big batch that was sent out by Udonis at the end of the year, there were a number of people for whom streets were renamed that had died in 2021. I couldn't find the email to confirm that, but I wondered if the rules have changed in terms of how many years have had to pass since someone died before we name a street after them.
It's an excellent question, Sally Fisher. There are two ways a street can get co-named. There's a community board process. Again, April and October. There's an application, etc. That's a process. And we have some guidelines that somebody needs to be passed for, I think it's 2 years. A council member can kind of do their own as well. So Udonis loved co-namings. And so I think, I'm not positive, but I think he did like more than a lot of other council members. But I'm not positive. But those don't come through us, and I have no, like they don't have to have the same criteria as we have, I guess.
Yes, he did.
Any council member can do their own.
Makes sense. Faye, go ahead.
Thank you, Catherine, and good evening again, everyone. Yes, the question actually, more than a question, is basically just like a suggestion. So I just wondered on this topic that she's raising. I wondered in the part of community engagement, if you intend, or if you had already spoke to the District 6, the superintendent office, because I understand that when it comes to engagement, it's very important to, approach to his office, at least for protocol, in which I don't doubt that you will do that. And equally important, that's something that I definitely would like to, to keep an eye on it. And then in whichever way I can possibly collaborate with you, just keep me posted on that, please.
Yeah, I definitely want to tell you more about it, Faye, like this group. I mean, maybe you already are super familiar, but it's such a cool program. I mean, it's actually about, I don't think this is like the main part of their program, but it was really cool that DOT does this. And again, I don't know if other agencies do it, and it was really neat. So, but again, I think this is more about this felt like, so I just want to keep people focused on, especially with TNT resolutions, they're about something specific. We need to vote on that specific thing. And then I'd also it felt a little bit like, Domingo, you were substituting your judgment for the judgment of me and the committee, me as chair. But I don't want to lose fact of there is this big subject. And again, it may come up with other agencies as well, about outreach and the challenges and the sort of the specific terrain of how that gets done in CB12. And that's
Debbie, sorry. I just want to add, because I have my hand up, and I want to know, we have a lot of many other important presentations this evening that I don't want to discard. One, I wanted to just echo, and also to Liz's point, this is why I feel like, especially if we really want to bring in folks to support outreach in terms of whether it's stipends or staff, planning is key, right? If anything smells like this is spicy, or this is something that a lot of people would be interested in, then we need to allow time both for internal committee work and for the board to be able to kind of read that, right? That's why in exec committee, we always get a preview of what's coming in the following month, so we can keep it on our radar. I really do wish that, and I think, really because the board office is on Outlook and everyone uses so many different systems, that we had a way that we had a Dropbox where I could find all of these previews. But for now, we have to supplement that with hearing it, in a meeting, and through a newsletter. I don't want to get into a back and forth. I do think, Debbie, I hear you and I appreciate you taking the time to share how it felt as a chair. I think that it's important for you to touch base privately on what happened that night. I do want to echo too, though, right? That evening there was another, I think I didn't pass the item on the ELISA around how do we define good outreach? And I think, or good engagement. And I think everyone on this board defines it very differently. We may disagree on some standards and some people vote based on their personal way that they define. Is it appropriate engagement to my level? Or is there something that's kind of glaring here? And I had shared honestly my opinions in terms of what I felt was glaring. But I do think that it's important for you two to connect offline, and I think with anyone else as well. And I'm happy to share that.
By the way, 181st Street busway update should be happening in the February meeting.
See, that is major. So I think even quick Canva flyers that we can kind of share out for that. So that's something I would love to see, because there were so many folks who were pro or against them. So that's lovely. I'm going to move on to our next report, and our next report, I'm not looking at the agenda, sorry, is
Business development.
Thank you. Oh, great. Another lengthy one. Go ahead, Francisco. Are you there?
Yeah, hold on. Hey guys. Okay. This month we had hold on. I have my 2-year-old. Just give me a second.
That's cool. If you want, I could pass.
Come back to me. Let me straighten this.
All right. So we're gonna go to public safety for Domingo.
I wasn't able to attend the meeting. Barbara facilitated it this past month. So I would say we'll just review the minutes once they're up. And for next month, we're currently working with Jamani Williams to have a conversation around what does he mean when he talks about reimagining public safety. Okay.
No, that's another one we need to blast very hard. So let us know when that.
Yeah, we will. Like usually, my committee has good engagement. All right, bye.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Domingo. Francisco, just raise your hand on the screen and I'll come to you. We have land use with Wayne.
Okay, thanks. So land use considered two things at the January meeting. As I mentioned, we were asked somewhat at the last minute to address the historic markers that will be located in the Jamel Terrace district. And just for background, the community board unanimously passed a resolution, I think it was February of last year, that went through Parks and Cultural Affairs, where there is an initiative led by a group called While We Are Still Here, the leader of which is a former CB12 member. And it's basically focused on, the documenting the sort of places and people that are in Upper Manhattan associated with the Harlem Renaissance. And there are historic markers to be placed on streets, most of which are in CBs 9 and 10. A couple are in CB 12, two of which are in the Jamel Terrace Historic District. And that's how the outreach came to Ebenezer and then to me, quite literally on the day of the land use meeting, to see if we had any comments, because LPC was holding a public hearing on those two the following Tuesday. So we reviewed the prior resolution, we reviewed the materials, we thought it was great, and passed a resolution, supporting, those two in the historic district. And we also, somewhat coming out a lot of the discussion in the past year on proposed development activity in the southwest corner of the district. You'll remember long discussions on 857 Riverside Drive, which is the house that is associated with not one but two abolitionists. as well as many years of discussion of the West 158th Street row houses, which are directly adjacent to the Audubon Park Historic District and should have been, but were not included in the district. And LPC has not acted on multiple requests. So on each of those sites, there are proposals to build, in one case, a 13-story building, and in another case, a 17-story building. In the planning study that CB12 completed in 2008, we focused on, contextual zoning and preserving neighborhood character. There was a subsequent soft site analysis done by planning interns provided by Scott Stringer, where they pointed out that and it's interesting, in Washington Heights, the area that is west of Broadway between 155th and 177th is zoned R8, which provides for higher density, almost twice the density as R72, which is what the rest of the community is for the most part zoned. We have, asked in a number of ways for city planning to address that, and we thought it was appropriate to pass the resolution, specifically asking them to focus on that area, rezoning it from the 1961 R8 zoning, which is height factor zoning, which, as you know, means there are no height limits imposed, to something that is contextual, that would respect the neighborhood character and scale. We also thought it was interesting that in September of last year, city planning launched an initiative to obtain public comment, and forgive me because my other phone is ringing, on what constitutes good urban design. And we thought, sort of in light of that, they should not only pay attention to this request, but also pay attention to the planning studies where we have clearly articulated our ideas of what constitutes good urban design.
I'm sorry to be laughing, but I killed my video earlier because I just got the same robocall from Tom
Yes.
Fuzzy.
Any
All
questions other than
Basically, y'all with
who's running for
landlines.
office?
Are any questions, comments for Wayne, folks? Are we all getting roll called?
Quick question. So what did the LP?
When is he going to stop talking?
I don't know. I hung up. What did the LPC decide with respect to the signage?
As I said earlier, I have not heard back from the office. So I just actually emailed Sasha now to ask, did LPC consider the matter at their January 11th public hearing, or did they defer it to a latter date to allow DOT to review and comment? And if it is the latter, do they still require CB12M to review and comment? Because as you know, Liz, just because DOT is, reviewing and commenting on something does not mean they are addressing LPC's concerns.
Right. Cool. Thanks. Keep us posted.
All right. Thanks, Wayne. I saw Francisco had his hand up. So Francisco, you ready?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, go ahead. You got 5 minutes.
Okay. Happy New Year, everybody. So for this month's meeting, we once again focused on the business of cannabis and focused on the different ways that our community members can indulge themselves in the industry of cannabis through the various licenses that are available, that will be available in 2023. The meeting was hosted by our very own Domingo, and we had Tremaine Wright, who is the chair of the Cannabis Control Board. She went through the different business models, the different licenses, and also she even told us things that we should be looking out for as far as different parts of the business that people are not paying attention to that maybe our community should. We will continue that conversation in February as we will add a portion of the businesses relating to cannabis for legacy guys. Legacy is considered, the guys that you see on the street selling weed. The guys that have been doing that for 20 years finally can go legit, and we want to provide a platform for them to get the information they need directly from the state. So that would be our focus in February. We also had Maria Perez, from the Washington Heights and Inwood Development Corporation. She spoke about childcare and training people in our community who want to get into childcare, learning the different business, pretty much showing you the ropes as to how to get your own childcare license if you decide to, get into that field. We also spoke about the Small Business Resilient Grant that's provided by the state. It's $100 million for small businesses, and hopefully our community can get some of that, because the kind of numbers I'm seeing now is 65% of the small businesses in New York City did not receive the rehabilitation fund that was provided earlier that was provided in 2021. So our businesses are still running short, running low on getting government assistance. Lastly, our meeting almost, we had about over 200 people attended the meeting, which is a great sign that, outreach, if you're really purposeful and intentful, you can have the people come. If it's something that the community wants to learn about, you just got to keep pushing and just keep promoting day in and day out in different channels. That's kind of the way we attacked it. We also use our email blast to get people, people's attention in the community. And lastly, we just walked around and spoke to guys that we thought would want to know about cannabis in the industry and the business, and spoke to them and say, "Here, here's the meeting, here's the information. If you're available, please stop by and just listen in." So outreach is important. I agree with all you guys. We have to really do a better job of that, because the community knows that we're here. A lot of them know that we're here. They just don't have any other information. And everybody has a phone for the most part. And I'm not talking about everyone in our community, because obviously we have members who can't afford internet, but a lot of our members of our community have access to the internet. So it's just a matter of us just being very purposeful and intentful when we do outreach. So any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, I got me, Sally and Curtis. I just wanted to, again, continue to give flowers. You've really pushed our board to be on the vanguard of cannabis, to the point that you got Tremaine to come in, and I don't know any other community board has been able to achieve that. And also, you didn't mention it, but shout it out, like you guys got a write up on the Gothamist about the meeting. And it was really significant in terms of detailing, the biggest updates for, at this point, that the control board shared. And that happened at CB12, and, there was some really nice quotes there. So if folks haven't seen it, find it, Gothamist Community Board 12. That's just me. So Sally and then Curtis. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Francisco, was there any mention or any discussion of the funds that will be coming through that legislation for substance use disorder services and other healthcare services? That was one of the points that Deborah Glick had made during Robert Jackson's town hall on cannabis.
Well, our focus is business. So we tailored the meeting around different avenues that people can get into the business sector. So we didn't speak on healthcare.
Can I just quickly to just add, because Sally, that money comes from the tax revenue once the market comes up. But I remember seeing, I think on their website or somewhere online about, I think it's this year that they're supposed to put together an advisory board. Then that's also detailed in the legislation. So, and the market, I think, opens 2023. So we'll be seeing it in probably a year and a half. Go ahead, Curtis, and then.
Yeah, this all sounds like great work, Francisco. Hats off to you. I just want to flag one thing to keep on your radar for your committee, and that is that Governor Hochul released her executive plan today, and there was $1 billion rescue funding for small businesses. I'm not sure what that looks like in reality, but she did announce it as a part of her historic budget she shared today. So definitely keep an eye on that.
Thank you so much, Curtis. I will. I just hope that we finally get some of that. Because what I'm hearing is a lot of our small businesses are not getting any of that money. So hopefully this time around, we'll get some of that. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. I don't see any other hands for Francisco. We're on to Mary, concerns of the aging.
Yeah. we had a bit of an issue with our meeting, our last meeting, that our presenter had a personal emergency and could not do the presentation. This had to do with the zip code memory project, and he will be coming at our next meeting on February 3rd to do that presentation. So I encourage people to attend if you can. It's an interesting project I can read you this little blurb here. The Zip Code Memory Project seeks to find reparative ways to memorialize the devastating losses resulting from the coronavirus pandemic, while also acknowledging its radically different effects on upper New York City neighborhoods. So, you know, I look forward to that, hearing more about that, that project. What we did, we had a discussion about how the senior centers are doing in light of, you know, COVID affecting staff and some of the clients that attend the senior centers. They've had to curtail some of the, some centers have had to curtail certain things like some of their programs because of, you know, this social distancing need. You know, there have been instances where they've had, where some senior centers have had to close for up to 2 weeks. One closed only for 1 day because of staffing issues. But in general, they're providing service for as many clients as possible, and following the DFTA guidelines, which was 25% capacity. You know, providing meals, either sit-down meals with limited resource, you know, limited numbers of people being able to do that, and providing, some of the centers are providing grab-and-go meals so that the seniors are, you know, get the nourishment that they need. That's about it. Or, like I said, that the next meeting we'll have this presentation.
Wayne has a sign up for you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary, quick question concerning Medicare. There are, I guess, a number of different Medicare supplement or plans. And I wonder if the committee has ever looked at, had someone come and do a presentation that evaluated the differences among the various plans that are offered, and, you know, highlight some of the pros and cons of each, so that as residents have to, you know, make a choice, there is some resource they have to rely upon, as opposed to just going by the latest TV ad.
One of the problems that we have is that we don't have that many seniors actually, you know, joining our meeting. The Star Senior Center were having their clients join our meeting, but then there was a programming issue, so that the time became, you know, impossible for the people there to be at our meeting. We address actually that more at the WICOA, which, you know, which I'm a member of as well, the Washington Heights Inwood Council on Aging, because there are more agencies involved in that organization.
Yeah, my thought is, you know, this is we have, you know, lots of community residents who are not in or using senior centers, but they are nonetheless, you know, hitting the age where they are eligible for Medicare. And this is something where, if there's information that we can share broadly or even add to our resource directory, it would be, you know, useful to have it be available.
Let me bring that up at our next WICOA meeting, which is a week from Thursday, because, you know, that's an organization where, you know, people are working with people in the community, not just, from, not just from senior centers, although the senior center directors are all members of WICOA as well, but there are lots of other agencies involved, and the NORCs and I don't know, a lot of different people. Anybody that's working, with seniors.
Okay. Mary, I had a quick question, and then I know Liz
Yeah.
has her hand up too. I know I saw that nursing home deaths did tick up despite hospitalizations going down. Since Betty's passing, did anyone come to the meeting this month from Isabella?
Yes.
Or do we have a new? Okay.
Yes, we have Diane Ashley, who is actually can't remember her title at this moment, but she was Betty's boss, basically. And she has committed to attend not only the Aging Committee meeting, but the Health and Environment Committee meeting. And she was at both meetings. And she will be continuing to attend for the time being.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
To keep Isabella involved.
Liz, go ahead, and then we'll move on.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's possible, Mary, if somebody on WICOA can put together like some kind of a cheat sheet, such as Wayne is describing, because that clearly would be useful information. And there may be somebody at WICOA who has that kind of expertise. I'm not looking to make more work for you.
Yeah,
like senior centers may already be putting that together, or they may be part of the way there. I don't know.
Okay.
And then if they do, the community board can of course be a vehicle to share that information.
Right.
Okay.
Because we not too long ago had a presentation from Medicare folks.
Got it. And I'm killing my video because I'm eating. Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay.
Enjoy your dinner. All right, Steve, I see you on the screen. Are you around? Steve Simon.
Yeah, hi.
Oh, all right. You ready? Should we pass?
I tell you, with respect to that last point about Medicare, you would think that some public consumer-oriented organization would have already done something like that, evaluating the different plans that are available. There's got to be something out there already.
AARP may well have done something like this.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. You would think so. Yeah. Although they're also hooked up, I think, to one of the plans themselves. But yeah, we should look. That would be a more likely place, I think, to look, rather than expect our local agency to be equipped to do a real consumer-oriented comparison of the different plans that are available. So let me talk about the latest statistics on COVID-19. I mean, I heard on the radio today that, or yesterday, that it's trending downward. But for the last 7 days, we've had a very high transmission rate in our community, throughout the city, throughout Manhattan. I mean, it's almost incredible. In the last 7 days, roughly one out of every 100 people living in our community has contracted COVID. And since we had our general meeting on December 21st, just about a month ago, there have been 17,391 more cases in our community. And we've only had, since the beginning of the pandemic, about 44,000. So this has got to be, I don't know, maybe 40% of the total for the entire duration of the pandemic, just in the last month. It's incredible. And 41 additional deaths since our last meeting on December 21st. The vaccination rates in our 4 zip codes, all of them, in terms of people who've had at least one dose, all of our percentages are roughly 74, 75, 76%. Zip code 32 is closing in on 79%. And in terms of those who were fully vaccinated, all 4 zip codes are under 70%. Zip code 32 is coming close to 70, but they're all relatively close at 66.63, 67 for zip code 33. Zip code 40 is at 67.98, and zip code 34 is at 66.28. And again, our figures are significantly lower than the city as a whole, which is 83% vaccinated with at least 1 dose, 74% fully vaccinated. And Manhattan as a whole is at 92% with 1 dose and 80% with fully vaccinated. Let me just say, even though we have a high transmission rate, even though we've had 981 new cases per 100,000 people over the last 7 days, the rates citywide are almost 1,400, and Manhattan is close to 1,100. So as bad as we are, we're not as bad on the transmission rate as the rest of Manhattan and the city as a whole. In terms of my last meeting, the last meeting of the Health and Environment Committee, we had a very lengthy and extensive discussion about the Overdose Prevention Center being run by the Corner Project at 180th and Amsterdam. They reported that since they opened on November 30th, 437 drug users have registered at both that site and the one in East Harlem. There have been 3,500 visits and 78 overdoses prevented, 49 of them at the Washington Heights site. And that's those statistics are as of January the 5th. I thought one of the positive things they discussed was that they have a very close working relationship with at least 2 drug rehab centers who have stationed workers directly at the Corner Project, and that they are talking to drug abusers as they come in and trying to convince them to accept rehab. We've asked for data on the number of such people who have accepted treatment, and also the zip code residents of their clients overall. On the whole, I mean, I would say that the comments from the members of the committee and from the public were very positive. That people thought that the Corner Projects, the program that being run at the Overdose Prevention Center is beneficial on the whole. But we intend to stay in touch with them, and as I said, we asked for more information. We also, of course, had our regular presentation from the health department. Among other things, we asked that the number of testing sites be increased, and in particular that the District Health Center at 168th Street be reopened as a PCR testing site. The Test and Trace Corps also gave a report indicating that they are open to working with CBOs, faith-based organizations, and senior centers. We put Mary Anderson is going to reach out to them if she hasn't already to try to organize visits by the Test and Trace Corps to our senior centers. They're distributing masks and testing kits at those events. New York Presbyterian Hospital reported that it has had a significant increase in COVID patients, that there were about 350 at the time of our meeting at both the main site at 168th Street and up at the Allen Hospital. Interesting fact is that half of the people are admitted because of COVID, because they actually have an active case of COVID, and the other half might be admitted for other reasons, but they also have COVID, as it turns out. As Mary said, Diane Ashley, who is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for the MJHS Health System, reported about, gave the report for Isabella. 100% of their employees are vaccinated, 90% of the residents are fully vaccinated, and now 75% of the residents have boosters, and they are reaching out to family members to convince those who may be resisting to have their family members vaccinated. to try to convince them that they should do so. At the next meeting, I'm hoping to have a presentation about the brownfield cleanup plan for 4650 Broadway, the high-rise development at Sherman Avenue. And so I missed the earlier discussion about increasing our outreach efforts, but that would be a topic for which I would certainly think that we need to do some outreach into the immediate community around that project.
Steve, before you go on, just because of time, you have a hand, and then we also do have to, actually after Darryl, we'll talk about it, but go ahead if you want to start wrapping up.
Oh, no, that's my report.
Okay. Liz?
Just quick question, is the committee gonna help put the word out that the feds have gone live with their site to mail test kits to every household? Or is the board gonna do something with that?
I think the board should do that. I mean, isn't the city or the state also distributing these kits, but you have to call up or request them by email?
Yeah, I don't know, but the US Postal Service website is live, and I know like many people have already ordered theirs, including us.
Yeah, the city's also sent a text blast about the website. Man, I just forgot what I was in this.
Yeah, we should.
But that's something we could bring to Ebenezer about sending it.
Yeah, we
tomorrow, Wednesday. I mean Thursday.
We should definitely do that.
While you were out, during Sally's treasurer report, we were talking about the environmental dollars for the e-waste recycling events. It seems that funding has already hit the board, so to speak. So that's a proposal I think that we can bring forth. I don't know, did Health and Environment ever put together a written proposal? I'm blanking on that.
No, we just discussed it orally as in the course of one of our meetings. So the consensus was that we thought it was a good idea and that we should forward it on to the executive committee.
Okay.
But
so
we can pull something together if you think it would be advantageous to have something in writing.
Yeah, because that way the whole general, because it's over the $10,000 and we would have to vote. That's something that we can share with folks.
Right. Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay, so I'm gonna have, I don't see any other hands for Steve. I'm gonna have Darryl share, and then we can, I think offline, actually, you two can probably, because you two should decide. So Steve, Ebenezer shared earlier, the fire department is willing to do a meeting, their presentation, but both housing and health land on the same day. And so that presents a conflict. There's several proposals that you and Darryl have to agree to in terms of either having one meeting link and both meetings take place on the same link, but in 2 breakout rooms, which can both be recorded simultaneously. There was another proposal of either them kind of just dropping in or sharing out 3 different links so that there's one joint presentation for both housing audiences and health audiences to listen into the FDNY and ask questions, or other ways.
Is this specifically connected to the fire in the Bronx?
I don't want to say yes. Ebenezer, can you remind us what the presentation is specifically on? That they're also, because I know they're also coming to the general meeting.
Yes, because of the fire on the Bronx, our chairperson requests the fire department to have a presentation to the general meeting and several committees. One of the committees that was suggested was the Health and Environment and Housing Committee. As you know, the Health, Environment, and the Housing Committee is the same day, at almost the same time, and the fire department requests if it's possible to do it together in order to have 3 meetings or 3 presentations on that day, 1 in the morning for the agent, and 1 for the health, and 1 for the housing. It's a request. They called me this morning. I told them that I'm going to discuss this tonight with you guys and get back to the fire department. You give me the guidelines, they can postpone, they have one meeting, you decide. If you decide to go together, we figure it out how we do it with Zoom. But it was our chair, Eliazar Bueno, who requests my approach to the fire department on this one.
The impetus for the meeting is the fire in the Browns, but the focus is generally on fire safety.
Yes, fire safety, presentation on fire safety in our district, yes.
Thank you.
Did they say how long the presentation might run?
They said that a full-blown presentation on their part is 20 minutes.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, Sally has her hand. I was gonna say, because Sally go, and then I think offline you two can decide, and then I also had another wrench to throw in. Go ahead, Sally.
There was also the fire for the second time in the post that displaced, a lot of families. So I think that's equally important to, and specific to our community. And the other thing is I wonder, and this I should have maybe suggested before, if this is an important enough issue that rather than it be in one of our committees, that maybe we do a community board 12 presentation that would be at a different time.
I think Sally's right. I think this is of such importance that it probably commands doing a special meeting. I think it's good that it's part of the general board meeting, but if they don't cover everything at the general board meeting, I would be supportive of doing a special meeting just on this issue, because we have had some fires up in Inwood lately, and of course there was this awful fire in the Bronx.
Steve, the wrench I wanted to throw in raised his hand, which is Domingo, because FDNY, is supposed to be in their meeting usually, and that's where the fire safety stuff has happened. Domingo, what did you want to speak to on this point?
I was going to contact Faye tomorrow, actually, pending. I spoke with the superintendent's office today. So as public safety and potentially youth and education, we could do it as an entire board. We wanted to do a district-wide, what to do when a fire happens workshop with all the schools in District 6, which encompass, so one of the things I'm working on at the moment with the superintendent's office, I waited for their response to reach out to Faye, was being able to put something together where we start targeting the schools and start doing fire prevention workshops at the district level.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do is, just because of timing, I'm gonna pass it on to Daryl for his committee report.
I'll reach you tomorrow.
I'm gonna pass it on to Daryl. So it seems Daryl, Steve should be deciding, and you can get input from your committee. We have some time. If this should be, a hearing that we push back, contextualizing with the fires are Inwood, or coordinating for something in February for the FDNY to drop in.
Okay. And Steve, maybe we can hop on the phone after this and talk it out.
Okay.
Just a few things from Housing and Human Services. First, I will say I wasn't there for most of the meeting, so big thanks to Marielle and other board members for carrying on. I was able to get the tail end of it, but some of the things that we brought up, a resource guide, putting together some sort of resource. Some of you may have followed on Facebook. There's been an individual who's really reached out for help in various ways, and people have really stepped up and provided a number of different resources related to housing services, related to food, and by housing I mean alternatives to shelters, food security, a whole bunch of different options. So really looking to pull that information together on one sort of resource page or something. The way that'll look, is still up in the air. I know other community boards have done something similar, maybe on their website or on Facebook. So, that's something we're looking to do. Also, we discussed a bit of the armory issue as well, looking to have a forum at some point in the spring. And what we really discussed mainly was just what questions we want to ask, who we want to be there, and what the logistics of it may look like. Of course, others wanted to bring in, and rehash some things there. That wasn't the forum for that. But so we'll bring that. I'll speak to Eleazar, about that and provide the committee's recommendations. Sorry. What was it? Oh, also, as was discussed earlier, our committee had kind of had a similar issue at the last full board meeting, where two resolutions were voted down, or I'm sorry, tabled. And it was a little frustrating because it was, the vote by the committee was nearly unanimous. There was one abstention, and the person who abstained seemed to carry on at the full board meeting to rally people to table it or vote against it. So that was a little disheartening, I have to say. But because it is tabled, the question then becomes, what next? How do we deal with this at the next full board meeting? When the committee, by and large, feels that the work on our end is done for that. So I'm curious, what folks would recommend, if there are other questions about any of that. And I believe, I'm not sure who's on from the staff, but we should have the resolutions. I know that was one of the issues, that we didn't have it in front of us. They're very basically short resolutions. But I don't know if someone could provide that today, or we could, to certainly be there at a date in the near future.
Steve, followed by Sally. Both Paola and Ebenezer are here. And are you asking for it to be emailed to exec committee now, or if it's going to be emailed in time for next week?
If that's possible, because I sent it to them, but it wasn't in a good format, and I think they were going to format it into the regular thing.
Okay, so I'll let them respond. I'll let them respond to that. So go ahead, Steve. We can't hear you.
You're muted.
You're on mute.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Let me just say, the issue that I had, I think among other things with the resolutions, was that they seemed, they didn't seem to be specific enough as to what we were authorizing or approving, what the hours were that we were approving. I don't think they were included within the resolution itself. And so it wasn't clear to me how early on Saturday either one of them was going to begin. So I was a little leery of supporting them on that basis. So if the resolutions are coming, I assume they're going to come back to the full board. I would appreciate it if it was crystal clear as to what are the hours that they're proposing to work on Saturdays.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. And I will say, and I forgot to do this earlier, can someone promote Marielle, because she could speak better to this as to what the committee, because I did join after this issue was discussed.
I can promote her. 1 second.
Just got her. Sally?
Yeah, and I guess the other issue was, it seems to me.
It's hard to hear you, Sally.
Can't hear you, Sally.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay, the other issue was that it seems like the land use committee had directed both parties to do community outreach, specifically to surrounding residents, and it doesn't, that was done. And so that was what at least caused me to not support the resolutions.
I mean, I think there was the usual outreach for this. I think part of the problem, the way I see it as a broader issue, is that some folks seemed intent on trying to manufacture, if you will, residents that have a problem with this, when in fact no one stepped up from the area, from the buildings impacted, that did have a problem with it. So I think we need to stop trying to make something there if it's not there. And so that was frustrating. And I just frankly do not buy into that mindset.
I guess I wonder whether or not the residents were even aware that this was being applied for.
Well, again, I mean, that's you. I mean, that is, you have no basis to think in the negative, in my opinion. It seems like a false narrative.
Dara, I'm going to say, just because you have a few hands, so it's Marielle, Wayne, Liz, and then I have a recommendation as well.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks, Daryl. Yes, just to provide a little bit more context on the January meeting. So both Bruce and I co-chaired the meeting, and there were three issues with the resolutions. One, which is, as Daryl has pointed out, there were some concerns by one particular member of the committee in regards to outreach, and that kind of concern was echoed by other members of the larger board at the general meeting in December. Two other concerns. One was with, that I understand that there were some members that did not receive the resolutions in time, so they felt they didn't have enough time to review and make an informed vote. And then the third, which is what Steve has alluded to, that some members felt that the resolutions were not specific enough. So in the January meeting, we addressed all three. In regards to the point about community outreach, there was a resident that did participate in the December meeting and did kind of share, his thoughts. They weren't negative. He just asked some questions. And we did engage with the developer and kind of ask about their community outreach. We did feel, based off of their responses, that they did. And we agreed at the January meeting that, again, because we had it again on the agenda, no one else showed up, that we felt confident to say that they have engaged. And the way the wording is being proposed is, and I have to get the draft to Daryl, is, based off of what the developer has said. So not from our perspective, but based off of what the developer said, they've engaged with these communities in response to, kind of the Saturday hours. What I will say in terms of taking that forward, one of the committee members is engaging actively with the developers, and she's been kind of on some correspondence regarding ensuring that there's a sign on there, and she's working with them so that, if kind of residents have questions about or concerns about the hours, that they can contact the developer and have a conversation to take that forward. Steve, in regards to your point about making the resolutions more specific, your point is very well taken. And you'll see that reflected in the new resolutions with specific hours. We've also kind of, specifically talked a little bit more about each development, because there are two different developments. And then the third point, which is on timeliness, we'll obviously make sure that the office gets it in time so that everyone has sufficient time to review and make an informed vote. Thanks.
Wayne.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marielle. I would echo, what Steve said, and I would just say that for me, it would help, and I think for others, that in the resolutions, because sometimes there's a resolution and then there is the verbal presentation, and the verbal presentation and the resolution don't necessarily reconcile. And there's a lot of explanation of things that are provided verbally that's not in the resolution. So if the resolution says the hours are X, the outreach was Y, and it's part of the resolution, I think that covers matters so that we don't have to have lots of side conversations to figure that out. Land use, from my perspective, didn't have any, negative narrative, so to speak. We simply said that when we met with them, we suggested that they speak to not just the schools, but also the residential, buildings. We don't know if they did it or not. So if the resolution said they spoke to A, B, and C, it's already there for us in black and white. I think that cuts through a lot of the dialogue. The other thing I would say, which is kind of interesting, is the Community League of the Heights, which is a CBO that's been around for more than half a century. They're part of the team. And I would have expected that, they would have taken a much more visible role in community outreach. And, you might want to give Yvonne a call or email to find out, why it's not the case. Because that's really what I expected to happen.
Liz, Domingo, Mariel to wrap up, and we still have more reports, folks. So
Yeah, I just want to say that I appreciate Daryl's comments, Mariel's work, and there's a little bit of this conversation that there's a deja vu all over again aspect to this conversation where it's pretty much the same thing that we heard from Debbie, but the housing version. And again, I think that, if there's an issue that we care about, we have to make it our business to show up at the committee meetings. And then we have to defer to the work of the committee that they have done their due diligence and that they have reached out appropriately. And this narrative that nobody asked me or I didn't know about it, therefore nobody else knew about it either, is crap. And I am tired of it. My frustration is not necessarily directed at people in this meeting, but we saw 2 different committees' resolutions get derailed by that nonsense at the last general meeting. And I'm tired of it. It's exhausting.
And if I could just add, Liz, that a very good point. And yes, I think it's happening too often, and I don't know how we can address it as a greater board. And if people did do their diligence to either attend the meeting or go back and look at the recording, the committee was extremely hard on the developers in terms of their questioning and what
I know, I read the minutes.
What was going to happen, with their requests and how that would impact the residents and others in the surrounding areas. So, and I think it was a disservice to the work of the committee when that happened at the full board.
And it makes the whole board look
No.
silly.
So Domingo and your assistant chair to wrap up. Go ahead.
Did the developer provide any sort of when it came to outreach, any sort of signatures on people from the vicinity who might have agreed with the project?
So do you mean residents of the buildings next door to actually proactively get some sort of?
No. So usually when you close a block, right, you come to the community board, you get 250 signatures as a way of being able to make sure that the folks who are directly, let's say, impacting for whatever sort of event they're having, they go into the block that they want to close and get 250 signatures, which basically lets you know that they did their outreach and went door to door or figured out some sort of way to engage that direct area to let them know this is happening in your vicinity. So ideally, I think that if something's happening across, let's say, across the street from me, unfortunately, I'm not retired, so I may not necessarily have the time to be in front of a computer reading every single email and feeling like my judgment is equivalent to I don't know who. But I think it's important to be able to, for me at least, if I don't see that level of engagement, because that level of engagement is expected from anybody, let's say with some block activity, to be able to get simple signatures for people who agree with the project, or at least that you were informed about the project,
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're raising is an entirely new process of dealing with developers, one that hasn't been done before to that extent. And, I'm certainly not going to spring something on a developer
Okay, that's good to know.
that they're not expecting. And that hasn't been done before, and that could be construed as unfair and targeting, a specific one. I mean, the work was already being done. I mean, this was an extension of the hours of the work. So they were already in.
Daryl, I'm gonna have Marielle speak to this point. Liz has her hand up. Liz, you can say your point and we'll dive into your report. We do have more reports to go. And so I had my hand up earlier. Same thing, Daryl. Like, I think just P's and Q's, right? So if there was engagement, let's say there's a small business that's aware of this, that's across the street, just like naming them, I think provides context for folks who don't join minutes or for people who don't read the minutes.
I guess, the way you frame that now, I'm going to say I want to push back a little. I don't know of any other committee or any other issue where that's been specifically requested. Like why this development? Why? I mean, we have general outreach.
Hold on. I want to avoid back and forth, Domingo. Hold on, because it was on my.
I just meant to say, how did they prove that they did community engagement? I used the petition as an example. Is there any alternative that they demonstrated that they did the engagement? That's all I'm interested on.
Sorry, I wanted to share that I gave.
I mean, I guess I never questioned another committee's level of outreach.
That's fine, Daryl. What I shared was more of as an example. So sometimes, for example, in I think DOT, sometimes in parks or even in health, we've written like, let's say, I think when the Corner Project did like outreach, they shared just a few orgs or a business or two that they reached out to. Now, I'm not saying you have to include it, but I'm just saying like, yes, they spoke to folks, didn't speak to folks in general. I think for any committee, that's helpful to contextualize in terms of what's done. So like I said,
and I think that raises a broader, I'm sorry, I think that raises a broader issue too of, each committee's work with the staff team and, how their work is done and that supports the committee work, et cetera.
Yeah. So Marielle, Liz, and to dive in.
Thanks, Kathy. I'll be quite quick. I won't speak to the petition kind of question or how they've proved it. I mean, what I can say is they said that they did, which is kind of the language that we're reflecting in the resolution, that kind of based off of what they said. What I will say, I guess the only other bit on that is that, again, one of our committee members has volunteered to kind of follow up with the developer and has even agreed to attend kind of future meetings. They have apparently these monthly meetings where residents can go and kind of express any concerns and things of that nature. According to them, when they first started the project, the meetings were well attended and you kind of, the residents would talk about, questions and things. And they kind of talked about like, there were some residents who were concerned about a particular tree and, those types of things. They said that now that, they're kind of nearing towards that end of, construction period, the meetings are a lot shorter. Because it seems as if the residents kind of know what's going on. They're aware and they know how to contact the developer. Just wanted to comment lastly on Wayne's point regarding cloth. I did ask about that at the December meeting, if they've been engaging with community-based organizations. They are involved with cloth, but from what I understand, it was solely on helping kind of get the word out to Washington Heights and Inwood residents about applying for the two developments. So that's kind of my understanding of the extent of that engagement. I'm not sure if they've engaged with cloth in any other aspect, in particular to kind of the request of the Saturday hours. Thanks.
Yeah, with respect to specificity in resolutions, I think it's really appropriate for a resolution to say, whereas there was outreach, and it's really inappropriate, as evidenced by, flyers, conversations to generically say what the outreach was. And it's completely inappropriate to say they talked to this business, they talked to that business. That kind of thing appropriately belongs in the minutes. And if people don't read the minutes, tough. I mean, I don't think it's okay for us to continue to dumb down resolutions because people don't read the minutes. So the resolution should absolutely state what in the generic, that there was outreach and generically what it was. With respect to Domingo's point about a petition with 200 signatures, you're absolutely right that that is a requirement for street closures for like block parties and stuff like that. But that requirement doesn't hold for construction, for temporary closures due to construction. And while you could totally make an argument that maybe it should, that's a change that has to happen at the regulatory level, at the legislative level in the city council, or at the regulatory level by the agencies. It is not the community board's job to invent that new requirement. So I appreciate the 200 signature, the invocation 200 signature thing. But I don't think it's appropriate for a committee to require a developer to do that when that's just not a requirement that they would have to meet otherwise.
Maybe to make that a requirement, I used that as an example of what I
see.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Gotcha.
It's their
Gotcha.
committee. They want.
Got it. Okay. And with respect to my report, I believe Faye is actually next on the agenda.
You can go ahead. I'll call him for next. Sorry.
Okay. So we had we didn't have a lot on our agenda, but we had a very robust conversation also with the folks at Corner Project. So, pretty much the substance of that conversation, Steve's already covered. And I'm pleased to say, I welcome you to read the minutes, which I am pleased to say are being reviewed by the committee to make sure that they're accurate, but they will, go out on time on Friday with the rest of the stuff. We do have a resolution that came up under new business. There is a capital project that has been on the committees and on the board's list of capital priorities for years. It's called the Lighthouse Link. It's the completion of a roadway for pedestrians, bicyclists, people on other human-powered wheeled vehicles to connect up that 1.25 mile long path that is at the river's edge, extending south from Dykeman Street, to the pathway that goes along the river's edge that picks up around the Little Red Lighthouse and goes all the way south. So it would be great to connect those two. It's a very expensive project, which is why it's never been done. We actually are not sure quite how expensive it is, but it's in the tens of millions. The reason that this is the subject of its own resolution outside of the capital budget priorities process is the Build Back Better federal infrastructure bill. This is infrastructure, and this is the kind of thing that really could be funded by the federal government and could be realized, and is never going to be realized if we don't get federal funding. So I was contacted by a member of the community who said, does it make sense to do this? I said, I don't know. I don't get to make those decisions unilaterally. I posed the question in the committee, and pretty much all at once, everybody was like, yes, we should totally pass a resolution. We discussed it. We have the reso. I don't think it's terribly controversial, and I hope it enjoys the committee's, the full board support. And next month at our committee meeting, based on the excellent suggestion of our member, Sally, I did contact our new councilwoman, and she is going to be coming to the February meeting to talk about, her vision for parks and for culture, her funding priorities, to hear from us. I will extend an invitation to the council member for the 7th district, Sean Abreu, who also obviously has the southern bit of our district, but we all felt it was much more important to get Carmen De La Rosa into the meeting because that she represents the bulk of the board.
Debbie, you could go.
Any questions? Debbie.
Yeah. I would just say, Liz, having watched some of it go from the federal side, about sort of federal monies and how they get to projects. And again, I was watching it a little bit from one step away because I don't work in DC. So, I mean, meaning I'm not on the legislative staff.
Yeah.
But the city investments do get sort of like the city legislative people come to the congressional representatives and have these conversations about, so there's sort of a prioritization that's done at the city legislative level that wraps in the agency priorities. So sort of when you think about your resolution and who that's going to go to, we probably want to think about like what are the best dots to connect that.
Point well taken. So what I'd like to do in the interest of everybody's time is send you the resolution so that you can provide me with some suggested additions to the wording. And it sounds like this is a matter of form, not of content. And so I don't think that's
no, just to make sure.
Right. Great.
Right.
I will send it to you and we will talk offline. Thank you so much. Daryl.
I just had a statement to add to my report that I forgot. So it's not about yours.
Oh, all right. Debbie was the last hand.
So
Liz, you're on mute. Debbie was the last hand. I didn't see anyone else. So go ahead,
sure.
Debbie.
It's not about me. Fine.
it's not about you. No, it's just real quick. If you haven't seen, the free tax prep sites are soon to be up and running. They either by the last week of this month or the first week of next month. There's 2 sites in our neighborhood, the Washington Heights Inwood Y and the NMIC.
Thanks. All right, I think we're on to Faye's report. Debbie, was it about the tax prep?
No, actually, I'm sorry. I want to go back to just one thing on the Daryl resolution. I know I've given a speech before. Rome is burning. There is the housing crisis is so
Debbie, I don't know if it's
when we
just
talk
me, but
eventually,
Debbie, we can't hear a word.
Debbie, hold on, Debbie. It's not. Hold on, your mic is in and out, and it's nearly impossible to hear you. I think tonight,
I'll
you know,
just bring it up
particularly
at the
because, Wayne
Yeah.
challenged me to an hour and 10, which I completely failed on. You know, there are some thought things that we need to think through around, you know, engagement and outreach and standards on this board. And I think that we have to take some time to reflect on that and continue to discuss here and wider. So I'll just leave it at that. Faye. Your
Yes.
report. Yeah.
All right. Yes. Okay. I just wanted to report on 2 presentations that we have. On the first presentation that we have Christina Reyes. She's the executive director and also the founder for the Inwood Academy Leadership Charter School, and she came to provide us with a update about how the school is doing. So and we also have a second presentation by Megan Burns, but just let me brief you about what the Leadership Academy report on it. On her update, she just discussed that the number of, for example, the number of a student with a special aid had increased, and as well the services they are being provided to the population. She also discussed about some of the goals that they have. I don't know if you know, but this is a school that started very with very low profile, meaning a small middle school. And today, they already created a second, a school, which is a high school, both of them in a walking distance. And I believe they have probably about like almost, it's 900 plus the number of students. And she really wanted to reach out the community and basically reestablish the presence of their school and the success that they are having, so people can get to know exactly all the good things that they have accomplished and they still, accomplish it. So one of the things that she also wanted us to know, it's about some of the program they had just implemented. One of the things that she made it, for example, that she touched base on, it was about the every October they come up with this program, event, which they call the community in terms of unity. And this is something that they have to embrace deeply, and calling parents, calling students and the entire community just to, discuss about how the community can get in unity and be more, focused and mindful about, how to be, together, kind of. And also, of course, she always appreciate us to pass the good word or share whatever they are doing, so they can also, we can send folks or become conscious about, what the school, is doing in the presence of the school in our community. But anyway, you can see the video, of course. I just want to move forward to the next presentation briefly. We have Miss Megan's Burns. She is the programs manager at the Maurice Jumel Mansion Museum, and she came to share with us a new program that the museum is having available for the students. They call it I think it's the new school tours, in which is going to be provided by in-person and also virtual tours, all available for the students. And if I'm not mistaken, I understood that they also are in this kind of engagement on activity that they are providing. They are conducting some kind of questionnaire for the students. And one of the highlight question that I found very interesting is to asking a student how do they feel, whether or not they feel American, of how exactly they feel about that. So we started to engaging in this conversation because I found that question is really interesting, and I asked what exactly they're gonna do once they got the responded, for different students. But exactly, I don't think that I really haven't answered exactly what they projected to do with that information when they collect that information. And basically, more to come, but this is in the, of course, YouTube and in the minutes when it comes. That's my report, and thank you all.
Thank you, Faye. Domingo has his hand up for you.
Faye, I just want, there's been an article roaming around Facebook with the KIP teacher that was molesting the little, I think we need a response from KIP, because that was KIP Washington Heights. And we need to figure out what did they take, because this dude was doing this since this kid was in 4th grade. And I think that type of behavior, I don't care who does it, should not be tolerated. And I think we need KIP to really, because they've been, I'm assuming there's been a lot of hush money put out there, because this is not even hitting any headlines, So I think it's important for us to get a response from KIP as to what are they doing.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing that, but I honestly, I haven't heard anything like that, and surprised, because usually kids invited me to some of the, a lot of the events that they conduct, but I haven't heard from that one. When did that guy came out?
I'll send you the article. I'll send you the article.
But that's
But this is pretty recent. It happened last week.
Oh, okay. Well, I definitely will go after that. Definitely. And having experience, and basically, which is something that I never had discussed with the committee, but I used to do a lot of home visit and investigate, cases in which I had personally myself put people behind bars just because of this kind of behavior. So that was something that I would definitely going to go after.
All right. I don't see any more hands, Faye, so thank you. Oh, Sally had her hand. Go ahead, Sally, before runs Isidro.
Yeah, do we routinely collect any data on absentee rates, et cetera, in our district? What kind of information are we getting about what's going on in the public schools, I guess?
I'm not sure I understood your question, Sally. I'm sorry. You spoke about data
Yeah, I
collection.
wonder, yes, I wonder what kind of information we have as a community board in terms of absentee rates, vaccination rates, incidents of COVID, et cetera, in our schools. Do we get any sort of consolidated data so that we can start reacting to what's going on in public schools?
I don't think we at the board, either my committee, had any of that information, because usually when we want to collect any information, especially myself, when it comes to students, I always go back to the either to the district, or I speak to some of my colleagues like principals or teachers, and through then I can get also the information. If it's not my friends at DOE, but I have not personally have any data, or I have request any data on that. If this is something that you would like to see, which eventually that definitely is going to surface, definitely.
Yeah, I guess I would like us to have that kind of information, because I get a lot of flack from community members that basically we aren't doing anything about what's going on in our public schools as a community board.
Well, trust me, there's a lot going on, and there is a lot that they don't want to say, and they will not say, at least the only times, is going to disclose those things. But I'm sure that it's a lot of things that's going out. And, but, there are things that in my case, you probably just decide not to even talk about it until the time is right.
Yeah, so Faye, I would say if you could reach out to Sally, maybe if there's data similarly how public safety meets, that there's always kind of like the spread of data. But that's public data that's usually up. So if there's any type of public data that can be routinely shared from the education committee, y'all can touch base, and maybe the district office can share that with us.
Maybe an update after what
that would be great.
Yes, I can get an update. Yes. Okay.
Okay. So Isidro's phone died, hence why he's not here, but he managed to text me. He said nothing major to report, 18 licenses, 8 withdrawals, 1 was not approved. I don't know if folks saw it, but I had, as a member now, I reached out to him around the article on temporary licenses, for liquor licenses, that the SLA is starting to do. He said he had reached out, but hasn't heard yet any updates in terms of like what that means for us as a board. Do we get data on who was approved for one and whatnot. So hopefully next week you'll hear more from the SLA or at the following meeting.
Do we know if they issued those all night New Year's Eve licenses?
He didn't write that to me. I'm not sure. Is that Ebenezer? I'm not sure. So next week we can ask him.
All right, and let me just add one thing to what the issue that Domingo just brought up. KIP took action they fired the principal of the school for not taking action quickly enough against that teacher. So, KIP did do something.
Yeah. But I do think in general as a board, it's not one of the things that folks always want to talk about, but in general, I think this is in terms of talking about public safety, even within our schools, oftentimes we relate to talking about kind of like the metal detectors, or just violence from student to student, but never around harm and harassment from teachers to students or teachers to teachers. So I think that's an avenue that we could potentially explore in terms of community conversations. All right, so that marks here. I guess we'll hear from Nobles next week, obviously, or via email. Is there any old business? Hearing none. And Sally.
Yes, I just it's come up, I guess, in the last few meetings in terms of things that are inconsistent in our bylaws, and I just wonder if we can make it a priority to start the bylaws review committee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll make a note for Eliezer. All right. So there's that. And then any other old or new business at this point?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second it.
All right. Thanks everyone for a great meeting. I hope
Good
you all
night,
have a
all.
great night.
Thank you.
Great job, Catherine.
Thanks, Sally. See you next time.
Excellent job. I just wanted to let people know it's not particularly relevant to the recording, which is why I waited for that to end. But Barry, my husband, in addition to volunteering a lot with the Red Cross, also volunteers with AARP as for this tax preparation sites. And he's actually the regional coordinator. So if you have questions about what's going on with the tax preparation sites,